Ever since I've completed Silksong, there has been one question that keeps bothering me. What now? Well, a pretty standard answer would be the Sea of Sorrow DLC. But what after that? What could we expect the other expansions to be? And most importantly, what is Team Cherry's next game going to be about? I mean, we still need to get Wilco LCD Classics. There are actually answers to many of these questions, and even potentially that last one. But first, we need to get Sea of Sorrow out of the way. This DLC is planned to be the biggest expansion Team Cherry has ever made, at least judging from the official description provided in their blog post, promising to add new bosses, tools, and most importantly, entire areas into the game. The teaser itself shows us 4 notable things. These fishing poles swaying in the wind, what looks to be a chapel with a corpse surrounded by candles, a strange structure on top of a peak struck by lightning, and a submarine thingy. While all of this may seem like minuscule information, through the use of old pre-release material and cut content, we can find out way more about this expansion than what we're actually meant to. The fishing poles seen in the beginning actually come from a small seaside village known as Farloom Bay, a location seen briefly in the reveal trailer 7 goddamn years ago. This place featured the weird hermit crab NPC and a lot of giant barnacles, having at the time been placed east of Greymore. It also had crag-light enemies, no clue what was up with that, but the lore of these guys may have been changed throughout development. In 2021, there were some pretty major reworks regarding the area, with the addition of this object in the bottom left. This was actually an older version of the submersible shown off in the SOS trailer. While that vehicle is shaped like a giant shell, this one was more so an actual submarine, with even a fast travel cutscene left over in the game files for the Nintendo Switch version of the game, what the fuck, showing us how it would have looked like. Hornet is meant to use this submarine to travel across and beneath the sea, reaching new areas. Some of these locations are seen on the ACMI maps, those being 4 weird travel rooms that may have been made as some sort of transition points for the submarine, this sketched out ocean outpost that also exists in RE's sketchbook, and a strange underwater cave with no context. Most importantly though, we see the blue structure in the teaser. This area is actually internally known as the lab according to sketch text, possibly having something to do with Lifeblood. It was widely speculated that this is the fabled Lifeblood spire only seen in the 2017 map, and I do think this lab is possibly an evolution of that concept. The room itself seems to be fairly big, with both a surface and underground layer that encompasses it. Those lightning rods can be seen on the map as well, leading me to believe this structure is using the lightning strikes as power. I rarely see this discussed, but the structure itself seems to be locked, with its keyhole shaped in a pattern that resembles a strange creature with what look to be tentacles. Is it possible that we will be fighting an actual kraken in Silksong? Yeah, I wish. An important thing to keep in mind here is that all of these islands come from 2021, the last confirmed year of the bay existing before it was cut. So we may not actually see these areas like the ocean outpost or those travel rooms. As for what this outpost may have been at the time, well, Alchemist Xylotl couldn't be seen anywhere on the map, meaning that this could have been his original location, but that's just a dumb theory that doesn't really go well with his cut quest in mind, so don't take it as facts at all. No idea about the cave either. From the little we know about the bay itself, it seemed to just have 2 rooms, with the second room being so minuscule that I don't even understand its inclusion. In the past though, more room sketches were visible with the text base structure of Heretic Temple, whatever the hell that is supposed to mean. These sketches got removed very shortly afterward and the temple was never mentioned again. As to what it was referring to, it possibly had something to do with the Gloom, an old area that predated Bilewater and featured the Gargan Gloom enemies. In the sketchbook, we can see this strange cutscene involving the creepy Heretic Heart, locked inside of this massive coffin. It seems to be very unfinished though, so it's probably some huge story point that got cut super early. I don't expect to see it in Sea of Sorrow, but who knows. We will come back to this a bit later. After 2022, the bay was cut, but sketches could be seen east of Bilewater, indicating 2 entrances to a new area. These entrances can be found in the game today, with the big Bilewater gate in Chakra's room room and this tiny crevice in an upper room, having a disabled breakable wall in the scene. Due to the kelp in Merglin, we know that this will be the Sea of Sorrow location for Farloom Bay, and my theory on how these entrances are meant to work is the giant door serving as the main DLC entrance, with it breaking down in Act 3, allowing entry for free and without any effort. The other entrance could be broken into as long as the player has Fade Down Cloak, allowing for an Act 2 access if the player is observant or a speedrunner. This would, in my opinion, be pretty smart for balancing sake. While the bay is the main reason why we would want to take either of these paths in general, it doesn't seem like it will actually be the first thing we see. These sketches indicate a massive stretch of water as soon as we enter the area, so maybe the bay could move to the middle of the sea or straight up doesn't exist anymore in the game world. That would be a bit of a shame, but it wouldn't surprise me. I hope it doesn't happen. At some point we will get our hands on that submersible and be tasked to figure out whatever is going on at the lab, while obtaining a new crest in the process. That is the general gist of this DLC. But there is another tiny thing that I want to mention, something that I've noticed months ago but refused to talk about until now, and it happens in this scene. Did you see it? If we zoom the camera in the left corner, we can see what looks to be some sort of face in the water. This face appears after the scene is already revealed, making it more apparent it is not just the water itself and has a suspiciously similar shape to masks seen in the games. Could this be some sort of teaser for a story event or even an enemy in the DLC? Now, of course, the likelihood of Team Cherry teasing something like this is very low, especially since they never done something like this in any teasers or trailers, and this very well could be a rendering glitch or just a mistaken animation, and it most likely is, but it's a cool thing to talk about nonetheless. And it kind of scares me. I mean, just look at it. It's so weird and cool. What is also cool is joining my Patreon. Just look at it. But what's after Sea of Sorrow? What could Team Cherry be cooking up for the future of the game and their next games in general? In the blog post, we see that they actually have more plans for this year under wraps. This is likely the now revealed physical edition of the game, which comes with a fold-out map and a 32-page manual. So unfortunately, this statement is probably a nothing burger. But the funny thing about this manual is that on the literal first page, it mentions how our pilgrimage will take us through coral forests. If you remember when the game came out, I was very vocal in criticizing that the Silksong page still mentions coral forests despite that area being cut out of the game years ago. And now the manual mentions it as well. I can't believe Team Cherry would make such a dumb and stupid mistake. Like, they just rewrote the description of the main page, so it's not like they just let it slip out or something. No, they were aware of what they were saying. This is clearly false advertising. Fuck this game! During the time Silksong was first revealed, we saw a specific group of enemies that never made it into the game. These enemies are the infamous Steel Assassins, led by the enigmatic Sharp, a backer character promised to arrive in the future. So what can we learn about the gameplay of this expansion and potentially its story? Well, not much, to be honest. We know from the reveal trailer that the companions were going to appear in the Coral Steppes, but I actually think this was just one of many locations they would appear in. With how they are presented, they are probably going to be some sort of stalker type of enemy, somewhat similar to enemies in games like Resident Evil, attacking us at random places in Farloom. This Steppes room in particular is a really good room for that type of sequence. This is also kind of supported by the metadata of the trailer, as this clip is internally referred to as Deja 1. I have no idea how to spell that, possibly giving us a name for this big guy and indicating that this is only one recording out of many encounters. At this moment in time, the only steel related NPC in Silksong is Z, who seems to have been added during the last stretches of development. The assassins in general have absolutely no cut content left over in the game files, which either implies that they were completely wiped for spoilers' sake or didn't get very far into development in the first place. My bets are kind of on the latter, because Farloom Bay has so much cut content surrounding it. Hitting Z in game produces a steel sound effect, as Hornet's needle bounces off. This also happens to Jin in Hollow Knight. This may imply that we cannot directly damage these steel creatures, with there being more to their gimmick. And Hornet doesn't even attack the enemies in the escape sequence. But all of this is just a theory, as these guys have to be woken up somehow. As for the story, it is confirmed that Sharp and his companions are hunting down Hornet, for an unknown reason. It is also completely unclear whether or not this DLC will be gated behind Silksong either, but that would be kind of stupid. The mention of the City of Steel and the elusive masters probably has something to do with it, but I don't think we're ready to talk about that just yet. And that is unfortunately all of the confirmed DLC content, which leads us into pretty big speculation territory. There's another tiny thing though that I do want to mention, and it is the strange village of lions that will be coming back in a future expansion. It is completely unknown what this village is, and if it even is a village of lions anymore, because it just may be turned into Farloom Bay, but we will see about that. The only thing I can safely speculate about is the last potential expansion to the game, that being the game's equivalent to Godmaster. This DLC is of course the Boss Rush DLC of Hollow Knight, putting the player against 5 different pantheons that focus on different bosses, with the addition of selecting a specific boss in the Hall of Gods, and refining it as many times as they want. As you all know, Silksong launched without this game mode, and many are wondering when it will actually arrive. Something to keep in mind is that Team Cherry never confirmed that this expansion will be an actual thing. All we got is this one sneaky comment in an interview confirming that they have seen the interest in it. While I do think it is likely to happen, it may not. And if it does happen, it will definitely be the last DLC Silksong has to offer. The reason for this is so that the developers can add all of the bosses from the other DLCs, and balance existing ones without having to worry about future content packs. So I wouldn't expect this expansion for a while. As for how this version of Godmaster would be accessed, well, I genuinely have no idea. There were some theories swirling around that Hornet would be able to sleep in her bed and fight these bosses. One of these bosses being the cut Queen Vespa fight that was meant to take place in the Red Memory. But I honestly think Ari's sketchbook may be able to give us another answer. If you remember the Heretic Heart, its design very much resembles the Godseeker coffin found in the junkyard. In the bottom left of this page, we can also see a creature chained up with a mask very similar to that of the Seekers. And well, there is a pretty big connection between the term Godseeker and Heretic, kind of. This could also mean that Godmaster was originally planned to be part of the base game. And while I do find that plausible, I am not entirely sure Team Cherry would have rehashed Godseekers like this. I think their story is kind of over and wouldn't really fit into Silksong's more industrial setting. Pushing this aside, it's also possible that this heart and the coffin itself are sketches created before the Godmaster update came out, or was even announced. Maybe they were meant to be concepts used for Silksong, but ended up in Godmaster instead, as we know it was meant to be a full game way before 2019. Now of course, this is only on the off chance the heart is actually related to the Godseekers, which is impossible to know. But what comes next? What comes after all these expansions? Team Cherry have expressed the desire to create a non-Hollow Knight game for a very long time by now, most prominently in the Edge magazine. In 2019, the studio registered the trademark under the name Fearless Fox, which means that whatever this game is, it is likely what Team Cherry decided to put their focus in, especially as this copyright trademark has been updated as recently as 2023. There are two possibilities here. The game is either a Metroidvania somewhat similar to the Hollow Knight games, but not set in the same universe, or a top-down Zelda-like game, at least according to William Pellin, who expressed interest in creating more games like this. This is where we get into really weird and niche territory, to the point where things barely start making sense, and I go insane. In Ari's sketchbook, on the Pinterest page, we can see these two weird drawings. On both of them, a little humanoid figure stands in front of a sign pointing towards many directions, and the sign itself does not look like anything out of the Hollow Knight universe. The top sketch also has borders, which is a technique that only seems to be used in mock-up drawings of cover art. But these two sketches are only scratching the surface, as on the page for the Mount Fae elevator and Nylet's Guardian is this massive expanse of land. When I first saw it, I thought this must have been some early sketch of an area similar to Shellwood, because my brain refused to believe that any of these sketches would be anything other than Silksong related. But now that months have passed and I've inspected it closer, this actually looks to be some sort of world map. The structure seems to be the beginning point, with the player following a diverging path that leads to a lot of areas. Crossing this bridge would lead into some sort of town or even city, while the bottom paths lead deeper into the forest. Most interestingly, the entire world seems to be quote-unquote floating, or at least on really high elevation, as we can see what look to be railings on the sides, with trees possibly peeking out of the bottom. The path goes on for quite a long way, leading the player into this little patch of plants, with some text. It is unknown what is actually written here, but here are some possible answers. Next to it is another sketch of this player character in front of big plants, and at the bottom of the page is another world map, although this one is a lot more faded out and much harder to understand, possibly because it was drawn a very long time ago. It looks to have water though and some thorny vines. On the other page though, we can see a zoomed in version of that structure in the first map, being some sort of station with a clerk, with those same type of signs shown in that cover art. Now, I am not saying that these are sketches for Fearless Fox, especially because the player character in this context is just a blank figure, but it is possible that these ideas were intended for that game before its official title was decided, as the majority of these sketches were made during the time of Hollow Knight's DLC's development. These also could be sketches for some sort of scrapped game as well, especially with how faded out they seem to be. Maybe that's why Team Cherry is okay with even showing it to us, or they just genuinely didn't realize they sent this to ACMI. I know how stupid and insane this all sounds, but it actually makes sense when you think about it. Like, I look like that one fucking weird guy in that image. I don't even know, dude. If we do see this stuff in Fearless Fox though, well, sorry for spoiling it, guys. My bad. Anyways, all of this finally leads us to the last question of this video. Will the Hollow Knight universe get another game? And yes, I very much think it will. Silksong leaves off some pretty important mysteries behind that I only really see answered in another sequel. The most notable of these is the identity and purpose of the Steel Society, which may be inhabiting the City of Steel, a possibly separate kingdom from both Hallownest and Farloom. They seem to serve some sort of masters who have completely unclear intentions behind sending these bugs to different kingdoms. Some people would argue that these questions may be answered in the Steel Assassin expansion due to the addition of Sharp, but I highly doubt that, honestly. I think the potential City of Steel is just too damn big to be put into a DLC. It feels like a separate entity entirely, something so big and grand that it has to be a setup for another game, perhaps a series finale. The Steel Soul game mode, this cradle room, and the bottom part of Viveness Syndrome got added into the game after 2023, meaning that Team Cherry was not planning this stuff from the beginning. That spot was taken by the elusive Silk Soul mode, revolving around bell shrines and attunement, which was completely scrapped later in development. I believe the developers wanted to include some sort of special game mode at the very least, especially as Silk Soul had been teased since the beginning, and Steel Soul was a pretty easy way to do that without much internal delays or even work. As for this cradle room and Syndrome though, they're clearly meant to hint at future locations in the universe, and the City of Steel being mentioned at the bottom of this room and the Weaver paths throughout the world makes these concepts seem super important, like the player is meant to find all this lore and connect what is going on in their own heads. With how the game developed, it feels like the developers cut significant content only to later turn it into DLC, and to me this implies that maybe, just maybe, Silksong wasn't ever meant to have DLCs, as the Bay, Steel Assassins, and possibly some sort of version of a boss rush all existed within the game for some time in development. This to me in some way kind of feels like Silksong was planned as the last Hollow Knight game for at least quite a long time, especially since it didn't seem to have any callbacks to the original and no DLCs to look forward to, and with how enthusiastic Team Cherry was about working on a new game in that Edge interview, this to me seems somewhat likely. But now with the anticipation of DLC content and the hints in the cradle, it feels like the exact opposite, like there is more to this world to see and do, and that's fucking awesome. I will gladly wait 10 more years to smack some Steel ass. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'm sorry that it took a bit longer than I would have liked to, but I got pretty sick while making it. I'm thinking of actually making a Hollow Knight video next time, as there is some cut content in that game that could be expanded on with the context of Silksong. Anyways, check out my Patreon to support these videos and join an exclusive Discord server, and as always, take care of yourselves and have a good night. Also, Fearless Fox looks so fucking weird, like what is this? Why are we even making this, Team Cherry?